I want to ask the Minister for an update on the status of proposals to allow credit unions to offer residential and commercial mortgages to their members. Specifically, you might answer and engage Minister with the status of some of the 27 recommendations of the report of the Joint Committee on Finance, Public Expenditure and Reform on the credit union sector. As I understand it from when the report was laid before the Houses, the Minister and the Government were generally quite positive about allowing credit union sector opportunity to become a cooperative movement that is fit for purpose in terms of mortgage and residential loans.
Deputy Minister.
Credit unions are already allowed to offer mortgages to their members, and indeed a number of them do. As of September of 2018, there was €171 million of mortgages outstanding across the sector, which is a 17% increase year on year. The amount of mortgage lending credit unions can engage in, however, is limited by the central bank's lending regulations for credit unions, which allow only a certain portion of a credit union's loans to be long-term loans due to lending maturity limits. These lending regulations have been under review since last October, when the central bank commenced a public consultation. Reviewing these lending regulations is an important matter, and one for which I've previously outlined my support, including in a letter that I wrote to Governor Lane. The proposed revisions to the lending regulations from the Central Bank do contain a number of positive elements. The proposals change the basis of calculation for the limits from a percentage of loans to a percentage of assets, which is something that the sector has been calling for. The proposals would also allow larger and capable credit unions to do more mortgage lending than is currently the case. Based on the data supplied in the consultation paper, the proposals would allow, in the first instance, a sectoral capacity of €861 million for mortgages, which should be seen in the context of the €171 million for mortgages outstanding across the sector as of last September. The capacity would increase if applicable credit unions are approved for the higher limits. In the case where all credit unions with assets greater than €100 million were approved for the higher limit, sectoral capacity could increase to a maximum of around €1.8 billion. The Central Bank is currently in the process of reviewing the submissions and expects to publish a feedback statement and draft regulations in the second half of this year.
Deputy McGrath.
It's good to see the Government acknowledge the powerful work that credit unions do in communities all over the state. But for them in the last decade, many more people would be in huge turmoil. We know that in 2018, the Central Bank conducted a review of the house loans in credit unions. This was the same year that the credit unions were voted the most highly regarded organisation in Ireland in the RepTrak Ireland study. This being said, I think we can all acknowledge that engaging in house loans represents a change in strategy for credit unions that requires a specific understanding of the risks associated with this type of lending. I believe the credit union movement is well equipped to meet this challenge. However, we should not forget that the findings of the Central Bank's residential mortgage arrears and repossession statistics for Q2 of 2018 show that accounts in arrears over 720 days now constitute 42% of all accounts in arrears, and that's a staggering figure. At €2.5 billion, this represents 91% of arrears balances outstanding.
And thank you, Deputy, for recognising the recognition that we have the credit union movement and the support that we've put in place for the sector over the last number of years. As I have said to you, Deputy, there is a process now underway in relation to reviewing whether it would be appropriate to allow the credit union movement to play a larger role in the provision of mortgage loans. I expect that work to come to an end later on in this year. It's appropriate that we allow this work to conclude because the proposed increase in their ability to lend would be very significant. And I expect later on in the year we'll see draft regulations which both myself, the credit union movement and other stakeholders will then be in a position to evaluate. McGrath.
Minister, I said 2.5 billion represents 91% of the arrears balance outstanding. Non-bank entities now hold 61,446 mortgage accounts for principal dwelling houses and buy-to-lets combined. Of this number, 47,820 relate to principal dwelling houses or PDH mortgage accounts. These numbers provide us, Minister, with an important context for the argument to extend the ability of credit unions to provide residential mortgages. Very important context, and they're sure-footed and they're of the people, for the people. If we need to develop new methods of regulations, specifically credit unions, then let us do that. But don't have the central bank, have their claws on these people and keeping them down, because they are, as I said, of the people, for the people. We should treat them in the same way as we treat the banks, even if they do have similarities in terms of loans, in terms of etc. There is no one-size-fits-all regulation, that's for sure. So they need a specific legislation. The credit union movement must be supported to play the part that he wants to play, and has played since their inceptions, and a huge voluntary effort there also.
Minister, to conclude, please.
And they are being supported, and it is precisely because we're recognising the potential larger role they could play in this sector in the future that a review of this has been underway, been led by the central bank because they're the regulatory body for them. I met all of the credit unions there a number of weeks ago in my own department and had a very productive meeting with them, reviewing the different things that we're doing and the different opportunities and issues that are there. And as I've said to the Deputy, the Central Bank will have their work concluded during the year and will then provide us with the ability to assess whether this move should happen, in addition to the already significant amount of mortgage lending that a number of credit unions do.
Minister,